Hey there, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Fantasy for the Ages, the show where father and son get together and talk about science fiction, fantasy, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Today, it's just the father here, Jim, coming to you for one of our episodes where I've got something fun and nerdy to talk about related to science fiction and fantasy, but I don't have Zachary. He's kind of on weekend, off one weekend with our show, which means a lot of the content is just me or I bring in some other guests. Today, not a very long episode that I'm talking to you about, so it is just me, and I hope to delight you. If I succeed, be sure to like the episode down below. We'd love it if you subscribe, and we encourage you to leave comments down below here and check out the show notes where you can find out other ways you can give us comments and respond, such as social media, our Discord server, or even our Patreon, where you can support us and get some extra episodes and benefits that only come out to our Patreons. So, hope to hear more from you related to those. Now, today, you've probably already seen the title. We're talking about drinks, the worst beverages of science fiction and fantasy. But if you're not a first time watcher of the show, you also know there's usually drinks involved with the show. And so, of course, I've got a beverage, and it is not one of the worst drinks of all time that I have today. This is a beautiful red wine, Lucia number 47 from Pomeroy Cellars in just outside of Yakult, Washington. Just a delightful red wine, a blend of a few different grapes that I forget right now, but my goodness, you can see how dark that is. That's a really bold, dark red. Mm, and delicious. That's the last delicious beverage we're going to be talking about today. Before I move into the actual drinks and explaining about what this is, I just want to add out here a few comments here right now. Number one, wow, if you haven't already seen it, I dropped a little episode recently that I have restarted a watch of Battlestar Galactica. Oh my goodness, this show is so good. Not the 1970s, but the show that started out again as a reboot, significant total overhaul in 2004. Ran for 4 seasons. I watched it all back when it was dropping live, but you had to wait for each episode, then you had to wait for each season. Now I just get to binge through it. It is so fun, so amazing. I know parts of the show I recall dropped off a little bit towards the third and fourth seasons, but I'm not worried about that. I'm just thrilled that I get to watch this thing again. It's not available streaming, so I did have to buy them. I bought them on Prime Video. Uh, it's what I think is the number one source of science fiction and fantasy these days, so it makes a lot of sense that I found it on Prime Video. Thank you, Amazon. We may not like you about everything, but I definitely like your stuff, your shows, the things you make available so conveniently. So good. Second, speaking of videos available conveniently, there's a lot of our videos right here on this channel now, and thank you to so many of you who have been finding it and subscribing. We saw a huge leap of subscribers over the past week, and so welcome to all of you who are fairly new to our channel. We'll keep bringing stuff out to you, and if there's specific books or types of content you'd like to hear about, let us know. Send us a message. Our email is down below in the comments. Find us on social media, or even drop it in a comment like this. This episode, tell us something random you want to see otherwise, because we'll still see it, and we'll respond. All right, that'll do it. Let's get into the real content for today. So, we regularly, as I say, enjoy nice beverages. Cocktails, wine, beer, you name it, different things. So, my wife was actually the inspiration for this episode, where she was thinking, okay, what about doing content on the best wines that go with books? Now, it helps we were out wine tasting, a wine dinner yesterday, so it was on her mind. Well, my reaction to the best wine to go with books is every wine goes well with books. They're all the best wines. But it led me down a trail, and I kept thinking, what could I do with beverages? And it wasn't too far a leap to go from what's good with books to what's good in books to what's bad in books. And wow, I came up with a list of some drinks in books that are not good at all. In fact, I'll say are the worst ones and the ones you definitely should try to avoid at all costs. These beverages I'm going to present to you today are perhaps infamous, in fact. They're from science fiction and fantasy, things that did not go down well for those who consumed them. And I actually even thought it through and ranked these. So I have a top 7 of the worst drinks that I have experienced out there in reading or viewing science fiction and fantasy. And if you ever see a replication of any of these beverages, you will want to stay away. Heads up, there are some spoilers here from A Song of Ice and Fire and The Wheel of Time, and some other things. But honestly, if you haven't heard of the other things, I'm shocked you'd watch a video like this. So I don't think I'll spoil anything from the other ones. The Wheel of Time spoiler, I will spoiler light it. So if you know what I mean, you'll understand. But if you haven't got to this point, it won't ruin it for you. Song of Ice and Fire, I'm just throwing it out there because it was also on the TV show. You've got to know about this one. All right, let's get to the list. Number 7, because I'm going from the bottom up. Number 7 comes to us from A Song of Ice and Fire, but it's not the one that's really a spoiler because it's scattered throughout it. And a beverage that you'd like to avoid is milk of the poppy. When do they use milk of the poppy? Whenever somebody is injured. I mean, they have no anesthesia other than knocking you out. Except this, milk of the poppy dulls your senses. Basically, it's morphine that you can just chug. Now, they have to be very careful with it. Just a little dab will do ya, okay? Because when people in A Song of Ice and Fire are so far injured that clearly they're a goner and they're just suffering, you solve it by giving them milk of the poppy. But you don't moderate it. You just, hey, drink up, go on, tip, 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 all the way to the bottom. Good boy. And then off to La La Land, and you don't wake up. So that's milk of the poppy. If someone ever was to offer you milk of the poppy, I would recommend you avoid it, even if you're hurting, because wow, pretty easy to go a little too over on this particular drink. Number 6 is one that's a little more fun, and it comes to us from Star Trek, all iterations, and I'm talking about Romulan ale. Now, in the original series, Romulan ale was so potent, so powerful, that it was illegal. Of course, they were also in very tense circumstance with the Romulans, so I'm sure the only way they could get it was to smuggle it across the neutral zone anyways. Not something that they had open trade with, so Romulan ale was something to be avoided. And yet, of course, our core characters, Scotty, Bones, Kirk, they got their hands on Romulan ale. They tried it. They got messed up with it. This is some powerful stuff. Now, Romulans have the constitutions of Vulcans, so they can take a lot of liquor. Vulcans don't care about liquor. Romulans are the crazy fun cousins of the Vulcans. They're the ones who live out their energies, their passions, their emotions. So of course they want booze. But it takes a lot to get to a Vulcan. You give that same lot to a human and you're on your butt on the floor, and boy, do you have a headache the next day. So I'm thinking the hangover from a Romulan ale is not something I'd want to enjoy. I will admit I've had some hangovers in my day, and I do try to avoid them now. I haven't had one in quite some time. Moderation is always the key. It's hard to moderate with Romulan ale. Again, since early on it's totally illegal, and it might be illegal all the way through, it would be hard to know what the proper dosage is. What is too much when it's something that you can barely ever get your hands on? And what do you do when you finally get your hands on something that you never get to enjoy? Of course, you enjoy as much of it as you can, because when's the next time you're going to enjoy it? Kind of sounds like Romulan ale is a setup for having a miserable following day. So that was number 6. Number 5 is a fun one, just a fun name. The Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster comes to us from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. It was also featured in the version that came to the screen. It's described specifically in both places as having your brain smashed in by a slice of lemon wrapped around a solid gold brick. That does not sound particularly pleasant. The only problem with the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster is, similarly to Romulan Ale, it is so amazingly strong. Our meager human constitutions really can't handle this drink. It's not made for us. But humans like to imbibe. So, if someone offers you one of these, you'd better pass. If you decide to take a sip, even a sip, might leave you wondering what happened when it's now a week later. Just saying. Number 4 of my beverages to avoid is sort of a beverage. It can be slipped into a beverage. It can also influence you just through skin contact. And that's the Plum Bob from the King Killer Chronicle. Now, this is an alchemical, so not chemical. We're talking alchemy. It's an alchemical mixture that when you are dosed with Plum Bob, it changes your perceptions, and more importantly, it reduces your inhibitions. Okay, now that sounds a lot like alcohol. But the problem with the Plum Bob is it has extreme impacts and effects. You don't realize what's wrong with what you're doing. Okay, that sounds like alcohol again. But the kicker with the Plum Bob is the effect of it is ongoing, potentially for weeks, even months, not constant. I mean, at first, you're going to have this period of time, most likely days, where you are under the influence, where you have really bad judgment, where you have all the worst effects of alcohol. You're going to say what you think. You're going to think you can do things that no, you can't. You are so impaired that you will make a fool of yourself, or worse, you'll insult people, you'll get yourself fired, you'll get yourself in trouble with the law, all sorts of things, because you have no idea these things are wrong right now. But when it finally fades, you never know when it's just going to hit you again, just for that one dose. And you have this lingering effect then for weeks, again, potentially months, where out of the blue, you may be dosed again. It's not something that just passes through your system because it's not a chemical. It's alchemy. So it's physical properties blended with magic that have screwed with your body, and they get their hooks in, and it's not defined when the Plum Bob's full effect will pass. So avoid Plum Bobs. Avoid anyone who talks about Plum Bobs. Don't take a drink someone offers to you if you know they're an alchemist who perhaps might be up to no good around you. Any chance of getting a Plum Bob in you, you totally want to stay away from. Again, that comes from the King Killer Chronicle. I'm giving you no context of where it is, but if you haven't read it yet and you do, well, you'll totally understand when you see this come about. You'll also agree with me. Stay away from Plum Bobs. All right, number 3 of my top 7 is my Wheel of Time spoiler. So if you totally want to avoid any hint of a spoiler of Wheel of Time, I'm doing this right now. And when I do that again, that's when I'm done talking about this one. This particular one is a kind of tea that, well, point blank, was poisoned. And there's nothing fancy about it. It's just you don't drink poison tea. You know what happens if you drink poison tea? You die. In the Wheel of Time, we have a character who drinks poison tea on purpose, because it's the only way she can work her way around a commitment, a vow that she wants to break. And it's brilliant because it's a character, and I'm not going to name the character in case you are still listening and you're wanting spoiler light. It's a character who's a good character but chooses to work for the forces of the dark, kind of as a double agent, but you can't work for the Dark Lord as a double agent. You have to go all in. So this character went bad, but deep down did it for the light, did it for the good. It was the only way to really help bring down part of the bad, a key element of the dark. So goes in and does that, but to do so had to take oaths, binding oaths to the Dark Lord. And one of those oaths has a caveat that you cannot tell anyone that you've turned to the dark except within the hour of your death. So when she's finally ready to spill the beans on everything to the good guys, she takes some poison in her tea so that she will die within the next hour. And now she can say anything she wants. There's no coming back from that. It's a very moving scene in The Wheel of Time when that happens. It's one of my favorite characters that's involved, partly because of this move. This was awesome. That's number 3. Stay away from intentionally poisoning yourself with tea. I just wanted to talk about that one. All right, number 2 is so good. And again, if I'm spoiling this one for you, where have you been the last 30 years? Under a rock? I'm talking about Vizzini's challenge from The Princess Bride. You know, where Vizzini is challenging the dread pirate Roberts with 2 glasses of wine. One of them dosed with iocane powder. And can you guess? It's a duel of wits. Because he's already beaten his giant. He's already beaten his swordsman. Now you'll try to beat my mind. And I love the scene. You've got to know the scene. And of course, which mug has the iocane powder, which is very quickly deadly to anyone who drinks it? And the truth of the matter is, it didn't matter. Because the dread pirate Roberts, he has immunity to iocane powder. Vizzini drinks thinking he's outwitted the other guy, and I drink the one that doesn't have the iocane, and then as he's laughing, ha 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 ha, drops over dead because both of the wine goblets were dosed with iocane powder, because the pirate knew it didn't matter which one I got. I'll be fine. So he cheated. Long story short, don't drink something dosed with iocane powder. The death was pretty quick and pretty permanent. Which is something worth saying, because there are deaths that happen throughout science fiction and fantasy that are not permanent. No one came back from iocane powder. All right, number 1, the worst drink that I could think of from science fiction and fantasy is, again, a poisoned glass of wine. And this time, I don't know what kind of poison, but it was amazingly lethal. And this is, spoiler, from A Song of Ice and Fire. And it happens relatively early in the show, 2nd season maybe. And we were all so glad. So, again, if you don't want any A Song of Ice and Fire spoiler, oh man, did I forget to do this? After the Wheel of Time one. I did one in between waving on. I bet I forgot after that 3rd one. So the 2nd one, you just missed one from The Princess Bride. You can go back just a little bit and listen. But yeah, number 1, I'm just going to spoil this. Joffrey Baratheon's wedding toast. When he is married and somebody slips poison into his wine and he dies right there after his wedding, right at the feast. He's being a bastard to Tyrion And so everybody thinks Tyrion's the one that probably poisoned him. It doesn't matter. What matters is the death of Joffrey is brutal. He suffocates right there in misery and pain. His throat just clamps up. They showed it in all the graphic, gory details on the HBO show of Game of Thrones. I thought they did the scene really well. It didn't matter. We all hated Joffrey really well. So this brutal death just kind of seemed fitting. I think we were all pretty good with it. Oh, still, you wouldn't want to drink that. I'm pretty confident nobody wants to touch that beverage because nobody wants to go out that way. That was horrible, awful, the worst. And so that gets number one. The number one beverage. Worst beverage from science fiction and fantasy, whatever was in Joffrey Baratheon's wine. No such poison in mine. So much better. Of course, I have not been picking on dwarf or little person or whatever term they use in A Song of Ice and Fire for people like Tyrion. No, not bastard. Okay, I do have one honorable mention to throw in here, and it's actually a spoiler from the Stormlight Archives. I just want to point out, and if you've read this already, you'll get it, and if you haven't, you won't get it because I'm not going to fully spoil, but the poisoned bread, along with the antidote that slips in the first book. It's only honorable mention because it's not something you drink. It's something you eat. But it was a delightful poisoning. And it doesn't go the way it's supposed to. And the person who was trying to do the poisoning is the one who actually dies. And then the target was never in danger. And then the one who was collateral almost dies, but manages to be pulled out of it. And it's cool. But I thought that was a slick device to try and felt it was worthy of being noted. But you don't drink bread, so that's all I could do. All right, that's all I have for you today. Just a little bit talking about, again, the worst beverages. Avoid all 7 of those. Stay away from them. I don't want any of you poisoned or drinking stuff that's going to knock you into next week and leave you so boom, 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 that you can't even focus or talk to people, because I care about you more than that. If there's a drink, again, that, how did I miss that one? Send it my way. Put it in the comments. Shoot it to us on Twitter. We'd love to hear about it and have more things to talk about. And of course, you can always come to our Discord and talk to us there. That's where I'll leave you then. Let me run our outro. This has the quick reminder then next to me of all those kinds of things I was talking about. Again, like and subscribe. We do want the almighty algorithm here on YouTube to keep promoting our content so we can keep having more people find us and enjoy the fun. There's Patreon again. I do encourage you to check that out. We've got a number of episodes that are only available to our patrons. We're due to put a new one out there pretty soon, but there's already over 20 sitting there. Good stuff to enjoy, worthy content. And look at that, there's that email. We do use email still. Feel free to shoot us one at any time. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll talk to you next time.